Good afternoon. I'm John Spence with the Regional Education Laboratory, or REL Southwest. We are excited to have you join us today for our session, Reimagining K-12 Student Advising Systems for Stronger Outcomes for All Students. Before we get started, I'd like to share an overview of today's event. In a moment, I'll introduce our presenters and speak a bit about REL Southwest. Then Scott Solberg will discuss the current research around career advising. Brandi Fennell and I will then share about REL Southwest's partnership with TEA, which is focused on TEA's strategic priority to strengthen systems of support for high-quality advising and counseling. Next, our panelists, Natalie Clark, Lisa Harney, and Erin Jacques, will share information about the career advising systems in their states and organizations. Finally, we'll close out the webinar with a question and answer session to discuss questions that you, our audience, have about quality career advising programs. As the webinar progresses, please type your questions for the presenters into the chat box for the Q&A session. At the end of the webinar, we will post a link to the chat to our stakeholder feedback survey, which we will also send to all webinar attendees by email. We look forward to receiving your feedback, which informs our work and helps us improve for future events. Our goals for this webinar are to help you learn about three things that you'll see on this next slide. The opportunities, challenges, and key elements of career advising. Understanding the benefits of career advising systems, not just for students, but also their families, teachers, and schools. And also hear about multiple strategies for improving career readiness and awareness. I'm excited to introduce our presenters. As I mentioned at the outset, I'm John Spence. I'm a Senior Technical Assistance Consultant with the REL Southwest, and I'm serving today as the facilitator for this webinar. Dr. Scott Solberg is a professor in the Department of Counseling, Psychology, and Applied Human Development at Boston University's Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. Brandi Fennell is the Effective Advising Program Manager at the Texas Education Agency. Natalie Clark is the Assistant Director of Career and Technical Education at the Kansas State Department of Education. Lisa Harney is an Education Specialist at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Erin Jacques is the Assistant Director of College and Career Advising in Boston Public Schools. Before we begin with the presentation, I'd like to share a bit about the REL Southwest. REL Southwest is part of a network of 10 regional education laboratories that are funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences, or IES. We work with stakeholders across our region to meaningfully improve student outcomes. We conduct this work in partnership with education stakeholders in the 5 states in our region: Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. REL Southwest conducts its work primarily through collaborative research partnerships with districts, state education agencies, policymakers, and others in our region. These partnerships focus on high-leverage education issues that our partners or others in the field have identified as priorities. We will talk more about REL Southwest's work on one of these priorities, career advising, later in the presentation. Now I'd like to invite Scott to turn on his video and begin his presentation. Scott?
All right, well, thank you, John, and thanks to this great team for putting this together. Excited to talk with you a bit about this career advising, and want to emphasize, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. One of the big pieces is that it's not the kind of career advising that you would have grown up with. There's a new pedagogy going on that's really more student focused. It's creating individualized career plans. We'll show you some other states, and they all go by different names throughout the country, but it's basically a very similar process. And many of our state leaders have been working together to really solidify the policies and the implementation resources needed to do it. What I'm going to talk about is to show you the why we want to invest in this new vision, and also talk a little bit about some of the key elements of what makes it different from what we've done in the past. So let's start with some of the outcome research that's happening. What we're finding is that, and this is based on some research, and you'll have all of the links for that, but one of the big pieces is that post-secondary engagement, which you can think of as what kind of courses is the student taking, what kinds of engagement in work-based learning, applying for college, filling out the FAFSA forms, right? So this whole idea of post-secondary engagement involves a lot of different behaviors. And what they found from our West Ed colleagues is they did a nice little study, and they found that families that were involved in this whole career planning process had a 6.4% increase with respect to their students taking a more rigorous academic plan, as well as a 6% increase in college enrollment, which is actually quite significant when you think about this, because it's telling us that there's some little bit happening there with family going in, and that's the average. When we start looking at youth of color, we start looking at low-income families, we start talking about youth with disabilities, the actual percentages are even higher, because those are the ones who are most at risk for not moving into that post-secondary pathway. But what we also have is some educator engagement. When our educators are fully invested in adopting and really participating actively in these individualized career plans, we're also getting an increase in terms of that application rate. So there's something about the educator encouraging that's helping youth really get to that finish line with regard to getting their application in. And then the parents are certainly helping take it from there and getting them fully enrolled. The other thing that's very exciting, and another reason why we're really interested in adopting these programs, is what you're doing in that middle school and early high school, when you're connecting youth with caring, encouraging adults, employers, and educators who are really having meaningful conversations about the future, the possibilities and the potential that the student has. For every time that student can remember as a young adult that they had those meaningful conversations, there's a bump in their wage earnings, and there's a bump in terms of their actual stability and likelihood to be employed. So they call it a wage premium that's going on. And they're even quantifying it at 1.6% for each conversation, right? And again, the effects are even higher when we start working with youth with this, or young adults with disabilities and young adults from lower income backgrounds and such. So this is some of the data that we're using, and we'll go into it a little bit more depth as we go through, but I just want to give you a sense of, here's the why we're so excited about this, is that we are getting really good data that's starting to support the importance of this. Next slide. So what does the quality career planning, actually look like? And I said, actually, I've got some notes on here because a few words on the slide, but they're actually, each one is really important, and I want to highlight what we're saying here. The first is that we want a scope and sequence of activities. We're not just giving an interest assessment and saying we're done, right? Which is what a lot of us got. We're talking about a full across the year, a program of consistent activities that has caring, encouraging conversations combined with technology to help explore who I can be and what I can become. And in addition, that scope and sequence is organized around 3 skill sets: self-exploration skills, career exploration skills, and career planning skills, really looking at the future and how I'm going to get there. It's facilitated, as we said, by caring, encouraging educators, not specialists in career development. It's not just the school counselors. It's all of us as educators. And the data is bearing that out, that when you're facilitating these conversations and these activities, and they're fun activities to do, it has a very powerful impact. The other is that we want some one-on-one time as well at some point in the process. It's a tier 1 activity, full class. And then once a year, maybe twice, there's a check-in where we really help to have, where the student kind of leads a conversation about what they're learning about themselves, what their plans are, what they're thinking about. And there's something about that need for that one-on-one crystallization that happens as well. So those are the key pieces on there. The career technology, there's free access to ONET, so you can get access to that, but there's a lot of platforms that are out there. They're very critical to this process because the scope and sequence of activities has to have times where the student is learning about labor market information. They're learning about where in my community can I get the training to move into these opportunities, right? They also need to know, what's the pay scale? What am I going to make economically? So is there a payoff between my investing in that college or that 2-year degree or the military or even a certification program? What's that return on investment going to look like? And we now know, with our financial challenges and going into debt through lots of college and not completing, we really need to be leaning into this so they can see the pathway as leading towards some level of social mobility at the end of the day. So the career technology is critical, but it's not a standalone issue. It needs to have conversation, needs to have engagement, and then it's all tied together with a nice portfolio. And most of the online systems have it. ONET does not. Some schools are using Google platforms, and there's different ways we can get a portfolio created. But there's something where the student has a set of artifacts that's the kind of information they've learned about themselves, results from assessments, maybe some written ideas of their future or what they're hoping to do as they go through. All of these are important ways to help the individual solidify a sense of identity about who they can be, and then start planning for what they can do to pursue those goals they're establishing. Next slide. So the next piece is then, again, kind of going through this whole idea of what this is about, right? It's about the development of these self-exploration skills, which we've always talked about in our school counseling literature, is the who am I part of things. And who am I now is not just taking an interest assessment that says, here's what you can be. It's learning about my personality. It's learning about my attitudes. It's learning about where my durable skills, which is the word we're using now instead of saying soft skills. We know that there are these durable human skills that are very important in the world of work. World of Work is asking for those skills. Our students have those skills. That's what we've been doing in education. We can call them social emotional learning. We can call them mental health. There's all these different elements that go to it. But the ability to communicate with others, the ability to read the room, right? Understand the complexity of nonverbal cues and all these other pieces. Very important. Teamwork skills. All of those skills are important, a part of who am I, and in recognizing what they are. And then we need to help them realize that all of these skills and these attitudes and this talent that they have is actually aligned to multiple opportunities in the world of work. And that's what the career exploration skills is about. How can I support you in learning how to take the information you've learned about yourself and then start looking at the multiple pathways? And then as you get excited about some of these pathways, starting to come up with goals. And then once you have a goal, then we start focusing on the how do I get there? And that whole issue of the ability to start establishing SMART goals, the ability to start thinking in a long-term way beyond what's happening in education. So important as we continue going forward. Next slide. So this is a data piece, right? This is my role is to give you the research background. So here's some data. What this is saying right here in a complex way, and we'll simplify it and give a summary piece in a little bit that's a little easier to look at. But what we're showing is the path coefficients that are going between these different constructs. The quality learning experiences, that's the personalized career and academic planning that we're talking about. These are students that are saying, yes, I received access, right, to a structured program with this individualized career plan. And those who said they did came out saying, you know what, I actually have stronger, higher confidence, self-efficacy for the career exploration process, which was self-exploration, career planning. So they're feeling more confident in that process. And when they're feeling confident there, they start setting goals. And this is the most important part of the mechanism is once they start setting goals, then they're moving towards a future. And as they're moving towards the future, they're looking for opportunities that can maximize the chances to achieve the future that they're excited about. And they'll take different turns, right? As they learn more about themselves and they learn more about the world of work, their aspirations start to increase. They start seeing future possibilities for themselves that go beyond what they had originally thought. And then that moves right into motivation to attend school. And what does that mean? It means they're perceiving school as relevant and meaningful. This is a powerful component. Once they start looking towards the future, they start seeing that, wow, these courses I'm taking, my math, the reading, the science skills are all important for helping me to achieve the goals that I'm interested in. And so this is such an exciting part to see it just naturally emerge through this process. That all then comes together around this academic self-efficacy. And as you see, when they feel confident about exploring the world of work, that also informs that academic self-efficacy. That's pretty powerful stuff too, because it means that they're excited about feeling a sense of confidence. There's an emotional quality to self-efficacy that we don't really have a word for. It's that sense that I have power over my life, that I can influence my outcomes in positive ways. And once they start experiencing it in one part of their life, now talking as a counseling psychologist, they want to expand it into other parts of their life. And so you see them starting to manage their distress, managing health and well-being. They're starting to now perform academically by increasing their the attendance goes up, the GPA is going up, and they're ready to start thinking about their future. They're actually ready now to say, hey, what are my future possibilities? So this is the database that we used from the very beginning, where our U.S. Department of Labor was sponsoring this work and working very closely with me in all of the pieces we came, and we came out with this promising results, which we've now been able to verify with other data to say yes, investing in these individualized career plans as a brand new way of thinking about career development, starting in middle, heading all the way through high school, has tremendous impact in terms of impacting students' lives in the direction of their lives. Next slide. Okay, so some examples then of what we're talking about. I want to go back now to the work that West Ed did on this. When they talked about post-secondary engagement, right? They're saying that when these students have access to these career planning and they're looking at it throughout all of high school, once a year, there's some kind of a conversation going on around the plan. They're finding that the selection of the course rigor starts to increase throughout high school. They're starting to look at, I need to get from here to there. I need to start, doing better in my classes, but I also need those AP courses. I also need early college courses, right? So you're starting to see then this rigor happening. We had some great stories about parents saying how the child was setting their grade expectations. I need to get this grade in this class. To see students owning the process, taking responsibility for making these things happen, phenomenal, just really powerful, and so much easier to teach when I have students who want to learn, by the way, just as an aside on that. We're getting early college, and that's also that AP coursework I also consider early college. It means they're thinking about my future and where I'm going to go. We also now have early college pathways. Before this, now that when this research was first done, right, these weren't there, but now they are. We have many more pathways. They're participating in work-based learning on their own. They're finding work-based learning. They need to learn more about what they're interested in. So they're reaching out and finding opportunities to learn more about themselves as well as about their futures. And then, you're seeing them entering these post-secondary places. Our hope and our goal is that through these work-based learning, and we're getting some other great data out of Strata, that the more touches they have with employers, the more likely the avenue, the pathway is going to be more closely aligned with the skills they really need to enter into these opportunities, right? To these goals. So there's just a fantastic process that's happening here, and we want to really, we're really hoping that you're going to see the value of this and really invest in it. Next one. So this is kind of a summary slide that really kind of ties it a little easier to look at than all of those numbers, right? That when we design the scope and sequence, our educators, all of them are participating. We're in tier 1 settings, so we're doing it through advising. We're doing it through, sometimes we've had courses where they'll have an actual course in every quarter. A different group of students goes through that course. There's many ways in which this can be brought in. And as they're doing that, all of a sudden they're starting to establish goals for themselves. And once they establish a goal, their next question is, and how do I get there? How do I get there? I've got to come to school. I've got to start performing better in school. And as a result of performing better in school, I'm feeling more confident as a learner. And once we have that, we've got them, because now we're seeing an improvement across the board in terms of their academics, but we're also moving them forward in terms of that future opportunity. Next one. So what I wanted to also say, and this is like right near, this is my last slide, this is this is happening all over the country. Our state leaders are on it. They get it. They're trying to help our schools get into this, and they're establishing policies, they're establishing resources, they're providing, in many cases, they're getting professional development opportunities. It's now up to us as the schools at the school level to really fully adopt and then look at the quality of our implementation. And that's the part we're working with now, is we know we've got something that's effective. We know it can work, but it will only work if our schools as a whole take ownership, realize its potential, and then really begin investing in making this happen. And again, I've got a list here of the different states. We have all the states. I've got a whole state map that you can look at from our Coalition Career Development Center that will give you access to what every state is doing in this space. It's amazing. And I wanted to say that our state leaders, and you've got some of them on the call on this panel today, amazing. You also have a district lead today who is amazing in working directly with the schools in a very large district to make this happen. So you're going to be hearing from some amazing individuals that are going to pull this together, and you'll just see from them the passion they have for this process. And we're just hoping that as schools, we can like take that passion and distill it and make it work effectively within our schools. So with that, John, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Scott. Now, we really appreciate getting a sense of where things stand across the country in regard to quality career advising and planning and your expertise and your research synopsis.